All right. Hello, hello. Welcome to Franchise This. I'm your host, Sean McKay. And today we're talking with Tim Dougherty, founder of Project Lean Nation. How you doing, Tim?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Dude, I couldn't think of anybody else who to invite. You're the first franchisor I've ever met.
Yeah.
The very first
I
one
don't
that I
know
met.
if I would qualify as a franchisor, but I was aspirational, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. You started franchising in a way that was a little untraditional than maybe other people, right? Like
Yeah,
you found
definitely,
partners first, we might say.
for sure.
Yeah. So I thought that we could start this a little bit differently than some of my other shows because you and I do have a lot of background, and I thought it would be interesting to share how we met too, and how many ways we're connected. It's wild. Shoot, I think my mom actually introduced me to Project Lean Nation, and then I somehow stumbled across you, found you were connected with a whole bunch of my friends and people I know, acquaintances in my network. And I met Project Lean Nation. I met you well before your first franchise, but do you remember any of those details? Do you remember when we first got connected?
Yeah, I can speak to a bunch of those things, but why don't you start and I'll build off that because I have some unique stories
Yeah,
so
man. So I think it was, man, it was got to be like 2017 or 18. I think it was around then. And let's see, I met Eric, one of your first kind of consultants, I think, in the game, right? Co-partner, something along those lines. And you were you had your one location open, and man, you had an awesome, the things I took away immediately when walking in there before I even knew you was the vibe in this place is electric. Like people are all happy, like genuinely happy. Like it seems like almost scary, contagious. What is going on in this building? Is there a cult brewing? And like the vibe was cool. Everything was nice and clean. And, and then somewhere around there, meeting you was just like pretty monumental, I think, for me. I think is a fair way to say it. Like you had a lot of belief in me, maybe before I even had that sort of belief in me. And man, I feel like I'm Tim Dougherty fanboy here, but yeah, it was just a big point in my life. I think meeting you, meeting Project Lean Nation, and witnessing your growth and being part of that growth in some phases, a couple different times.
yeah. Well, for one, thank you so much for that. And you just laid out a whole direction for me, but I can share this. So I will say, and I talk about this a lot now, like I'm at the point where I'm talking about the story, and it's so funny how the story has changed. Like all the challenging pieces of my story that I was trying to solve in those seasons are like the same things I share today, like the same things I stand on. So at that point, and one of the things you talked about was like the culture of our business. And it's like we had magic.
Yeah.
And to define that and scale that culture was a monster challenge. And then to speak to you, I always talk about how I'm open to people. I like to meet people. I like to be a student. I also love to catch people when they're like this close to going in the right direction. And I feel like I met Eric, I met you, I met photographers, videographers, and everybody along the way. And I think there's something bigger at work here, but I think my faith is important to me, which was really just belief. And I think that's like I can't help but to see potential and invest in people. And I've been burned, but I refuse to stop doing that. So I think my spiritual gift is seeing possibility and belief in others. And I think that's one of the critical things that helped us be successful along the way.
Yeah,
And
man.
then one other story.
Yeah.
Let me ask you if you remember this. There became a point where I was running this gym, the store, all the things, and I knew I had to buy back some time. So I made a decision that every Friday I would work from my home office. And I invited you to my house. At the time, I had the coolest dog for 1,000 years. He came over and he put his chin on your foot.
Yeah,
And
dude.
I never saw that before. And it made me feel something about you. It made me feel like this person is trustworthy.
Wow.
And this isn't the happiest part of the story, but that very same day, that dog passed.
Oh, I know. It's wild. Wild
It,
timing.
yeah, it was insane, but it was like all the things that came as a result of that were like some of the things is like my children got together, drew us together in a way that was like so unique. But you were part of that story.
Okay, so I remember that being impactful for you. Now that you say that, it didn't stick in my mind till you reminded me of that. But that's wild how those little things can play such a big part in how we perceive other people. Yeah. And I think there was times along our journey, like of us knowing each other where I probably didn't live up to your expectations or something didn't go right or, like any client relationship, there was some frustration or something that happened, but you always returned to me with like kindness and openness and not like, some begrudged like X.
And I still do that today because I've fallen short 1,000 times.
Mhm.
I'm aspirational and I'm always trying to learn things. So I've made goals, promises that I felt short on. So when that shows up in my life, I think that grace is what
Yeah.
further develops a relationship into something that's has more value, more meaning. Because I've also learned that if I'm graceful with people when they fall short, they will go harder. If I'm a dictator and I make you feel worse about what I know you're probably already carrying, there's like almost zero value in that for me.
Yeah, I experience that now with other client relationships where I can see other leaders in other organizations where they lead with that fear. And they're just like, I think in their mindset, if I act disappointed all the time, that this other person will try to work harder to make me feel happy. And it doesn't work, dude. That
The
doesn't work. It's the opposite is true. Yeah.
opposite.
And I think because you've been like that with me in particular, like we've been able to continue to return to this and build things together. And so I like to think that I played some little part in all the success you're
Oh,
having today.
lots of parts. The biggest challenge, and like I'm sure other early franchisors have, is just like putting together the technology, the marketing, things like that. You connected me with a tech guy who helped educate me to even know how to speak to the next tech guy who helped educate me to how to leverage and build a relationship with the guy that I have today that truly helped me scale my business. So I owe that to you.
I think that's too much credit, Tim, but I appreciate that. So before we get too deep in our story, can you give the audience a little background on Project Lean Nation, who you guys are and how you got started?
Yeah, you want the pitch or the story?
Oh, I love the story.
All right, I'll give you the story. I'll try to give it the quick version. But I'm Tim, grew up here in Rochester, obviously. Wrong side of the tracks. I think when I was growing up, like half my friends went one way, half the other friends they didn't make it. So the half that went to the gym I was with those guys, fortunately. So at 46, I wish I could say it was my faith that kind of guided me, but it was health. And that became an anchor in my life, which I'll save you all the details, but it led me to a gym where I started bumping into guys that looked like how I wanted to look in life, not in fitness, but they were successful and they looked like they were sophisticated. I liked the way they articulated things. I liked the cars they drove. I liked all that. They worked in finance. They raised money for public companies. They took interest in me, which as a guy that grew up kind of misguided, fatherless, like really they gave me mentorship and belief. They placed their belief in me. So of course I jumped on board both feet and got involved in what's called investor relations. So essentially what that is marketing for public companies. So you go to public companies and say, hey, we're going to market you broadly. We want a piece of your stock. And as we create and generate activity, we're going to sell some. So the issue in that business is it lives like this close to the edge of in the gray. And nobody likes the business. I often learned that for me to win, somebody had to be in a position to lose. These guys told me I'd be great at it. I had never been great at anything. I struggled in school, learning disabilities, all the things. But they were right. Within a couple of years, I had a wife and a house and a boat and a Porsche in the garage. And what's interesting is I always felt the way I grew up. I always felt like I wasn't enough.
All right.
And at that point in my life, I had so much evidence that I was of value, and I still felt empty.
Yeah.
That's the catalyst of Project Lean Nation. But what happened next is in the winter of 2008, the FBI walks into my office and says something along the lines of, no worries, you're not the target of the investigation, you're the subject. And all you have to do is cooperate against your associates, and you can keep your house, you can keep your car, you can keep your business, you can keep your lies. I was kind of in a tough spot, and these are the only people that ever believed in me. They caught me like when I caught you, like in
Yeah.
a point when I didn't have a lot of belief in myself, and when I saw someone who I looked up to who believed in me, that was more attractive to me than the money. They were like pumping. They were telling me they had belief in me, And
Yeah.
my choice, when they sat me down and talked to me, the choice was trade their belief for my freedom. That was what I was facing.
And they were
And
like father figures in a way, right? Like
yeah, for sure.
it's like ranting on your family.
I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you something in this podcast I never told anybody, but I made a choice to face the consequences. With that decision, I
Wow.
was sent immediately to federal prison.
Jeez, dude.
So, terrible time. Nothing like people think. It's not like there is all the things. There's violence and there's all this stuff, but there's like a tension there. And then you carry that around, and then the things that are hardest for you is like your daughter's birthday or your
Right.
mommy's, or like, and then all the other nonsense. Did learn a lot about myself. Read 1,000 books. Learned that I can um, find peace anywhere. I can be productive anywhere. I could be of value to others anywhere.
Do
I,
hard things.
I could do hard things. There were other things I wasn't recognizing that I was developing in there when I was in there that weren't revealed until I left.
Right.
So when I left, they moved me into a halfway house, which is the worst place you could ever be. But what left with me was this mountain of shame that I was carrying. So it was like having a black eye everywhere I went, and I carried it around into every conversation. I would be around people; they'd be smiling. I'd be having a panic attack.
That they might find out that you
You're
were
like,
a
you
con or
know,
something.
you're a fraud.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it was mostly, in retrospect, it was mostly in my mind.
Yeah.
But long story short, I really had no prospects. I had a 3-year ban from the securities industry, no prospects of work. Went back to the gym, the only place I ever found purpose or dignity. And in a short amount of time, some people asked me if I would train them. And that was not something I did before, but I needed something to do.
Yeah. Yes, I'm actually a trainer.
Yeah, I'm a trainer. I had done enough fitness to qualify, and I found out that you can go from not being a personal trainer to being a personal trainer in 15 minutes on the internet. So long story short, I met this doctor. His name is Chuck Cavallero. He's like the concierge medical practice in our area. And he's like the doctor to the affluent. Like he brings his bag to their house and, does
Oh,
the thing.
wow. Yeah.
He hooked me up with like about a dozen men, and they had everything except their health. And I had just been through this journey where like I was so detached from things. Like I wasn't interested in anything they were interested in.
You had nothing but health.
And I had that's it. But at the same time, like they had a Ferrari, but they couldn't fit in it, So I was like, that's not cool. Like the
Yeah.
things they bragged
I don't
about,
want that.
I didn't take interest in the things they thought were cool, which made me like a novelty. And the funny thing is, back then I thought I was teaching them, but they were guiding me.
Right.
And ultimately, one of them asked me, "Hey, I noticed you eat these little meals every day. Would you make me these meals?" And I share it on another time too, but I felt the same thing. Like I felt above it and below it all at the same time. Like no, I'm not going to cook your food. And I was just like in this place. But that situation had brought me such humility that I just needed to be of service to people. And like I just didn't know how valuable that was going to be or what was on the other side of it. So I started cooking up the chicken in my garage. And I'm incapable of doing anything a little bit, but before I know it, I was making like 1,000 meals in my house.
Oh, that's a take to cook 1,000 meals in your house, dude.
This all day Saturday and
All
Sunday,
day.
personal training all week. And I sacrificed time with my children after I'd just been away for 3 years. So this is a risk, but something was happening. So for the first time, what I do is I cook it all. Let me remind you, I'm breaking every law in the health department. I'm on federal parole. This is like, who your probation officer is, or who your parole officer is when you're on federal parole? An FBI agent. So I would put the food in the car and I would drive to the houses and I would bang on the door. And right away I learned this. If I dropped the box off on the door, the retention, the relationship, the results was limited. But if they answered the door and I could talk to them, they wouldn't quit.
Wow.
That became the magic of the business, and I'll tell why.
Dude, that's funny you said that because I was a PLN customer early on, and it was, I don't know if you still do home deliveries, but you were doing them then, and you had an employee doing those deliveries, and they wouldn't just leave them. I would be like, "I just leave it at the door." They would not leave it at the door. They would never, and I just thought it was just like they were worried about spoilage or something. Now I get it.
That's part of it, but what I learned very early that it was about the relationship.
Yeah.
So I bang on the door, boom, boom, boom. They come to the door, like, "How you doing?" I'm all smiles. And I would ask them, hey, how's things going? What were your wins? What were your challenges?
Mm.
Like work through this thing. And it like that conversation became the catalyst of what we would call today is everything beyond the meal, right? Because if we would cultivate a relationship that creates a little bit of trust and rapport where we can then counsel them, and that keeps them retained, that gets them results, and then that's retention, and then that's lifetime value. I learned that after a while. I say that like in an organized way. At the time, if you asked me, I would say this. Well, my friends do great. Everybody else is like, I wasn't even aware enough to know that it was the people that I was connecting with that were.
Yeah.
So I'll fast forward a couple phases, but all the guys that came to my little tribe of mentors gym, each one of them stood up. So one day somebody brought me to a plaza and said, I own this plaza. Dollar General's shrinking their footprint of their space. I can build you a store here. And I was like, holy cow, Joel thinks I have a business. So he placed faith in me when I didn't see it in myself.
Mm.
And he started swinging hammers and I opened a store. And then the next guy said, hey, I went and bought all these delivery vehicles and things like that. And he said, I just can't believe the interest rate you paid for those. I'm going to take care of those and you're going to take care of me with training and food. Like every person, an army of people came together. And what was interesting is that like these were the people that I was delivering food to. And it wasn't like they were customers. They were believers. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of faith in the genesis of this. Fast forward a decade later, we licensed a few. Then we got into franchising in 2020. I submitted everything at the height of COVID. The fire marshal comes in and says, shut it down, Tim. At the time, I opened a manufacturing facility, had 3 licenses operating in the South.
Oh, man.
We're top heavy, $2 to my name. Another guy from the gym walks in and says, Tim, right now, this is the time. Right now is the time. You got to go all in. You got to legitimize the franchise, the technology, the everything. And it was so foreign to where I was at. And then he said something crazy. And he probably was feeding me a line, but he said, if this all blows up in your face, I'll help you fund your next thing. And
So he gave you the parachute of confidence.
It was like permission. And I took every dollar I had, every dollar I didn't have, and I pushed in all the chips. They told me it would be ready in 6 months. I start telling everybody we're franchising. People start showing up. It ended up taking 2 years. So for those of you who are new to franchising, don't do it that way. There's a lot of compliance involved in regulation states and things like that. I faced a bunch of hurdles, road bumps, and black eyes and bloody noses through that process. But ultimately, that led us to opening another additional about 30 units that we are at to 34 units by the end of this month, with another 40 on deck. And I think that's the story. But in there are endless challenges that we could discuss. That it's been a journey, but I've enjoyed every chapter of it, and every chapter has set me up for the next. And it's funny. I was talking the other day with a friend. It's like parenting. Like my kids are 20 and 17 now. And I had this difficult conversation with my daughter where I had fallen short as a father when she was a little girl. She informed me of that. And I told her, like, I wasn't a parent. I was becoming a parent. I was growing up right next to you, baby. And the same thing as a franchisor and a leader and someone who can develop people and a team and run an organization. Like I just didn't have the chops, the confidence, the education I needed. So I've always been like a little bit behind, and that's where we're focused now, is just elevation of leadership of all people.
I'm kind of reminded about how many people talk about being self-made and how I just never believe that's even possible or true. Like, it sounds like there's so many people that instilled their trust and confidence, put their money in, put their time in, belief in you to help you get to where you are. And that's awesome. I think that's a better story.
Yeah, I just know, like, I know how many excuses and deals I will cut with myself if it's only accountability between me and myself. But when other people place their faith in me and they're betting on me, like, I will stop at nothing to prove them right. And what was really interesting is, like, I would work so hard on things that didn't move the needle, but who I became, how I shaped my character and confidence through doing the work, like the work worked on me. And that's ultimately what gave me the skill and the competency to start to move the system.
Yeah, man. Wow. I mean, and there's so much in the middle there that we didn't hear, but so for everyone, I'll do the summary. Project League Nation, provides healthy meal options on a recurring basis in an environment that's supportive, friendly, optimistic, believes in you.
Yeah,
How'd I do?
yeah, no, that was
That's the
great. That was
pitch.
great.
That's the
Yeah, no,
pitch.
listen, that's the pitch. I can like, here's some things that we learned. So like you have the factors and the trifectas and the direct to consumer businesses. And what they're doing is they're good at putting that box in the door.
Yeah,
And then there are organizations like a Weight Watchers or a Noom. They do a great job at the coaching, but our aim is to bring that all together and couple that with support, education, and a tech enabled member experience that helps people track daily wins and turn them into meaningful results. And the illustration that I use when I go to a conference and I tell people, I say, hey, like you're motivated. You've made a decision to get healthy. It's springtime. And then summer hits, and then like reality check, there's like a burger and a margarita on every corner. What's easier to quit on? A box of food on your doorstep or on someone who's invested in your success? So we try to put
certainly.
a person alongside the relationship.
Yeah, and so you're looking for that in your not only your employees but your franchisees. They got to be those people too, man. That's got to be hard to find
Yeah,
those
I,
people. They're diamond in the rough.
I can speak to that. So like right away, I didn't have employees when I started. I had people around me, and the people around me all had one thing in common. They have like high emotional IQ. They're like connectors, like people smart, right? So ultimately, I read this amazing book called Traction. I'm sure you
Oh,
heard of it.
you told me about traction.
Yeah,
We both started doing level 10s around the same time, man.
exactly. So I've never stopped. I put in every piece of my system, but I built those core values
Yeah.
and they became our guiding principles. And that's how we hire, fire, recognize, reward, and then how we partner.
Boom.
And ultimately, when we're off by an inch there, at some point, we're going to find ourselves in trouble. But it's been incredibly helpful. And I think that if you're new and some of the challenges I had is that until you know exactly what it takes to guide someone to be successful in business, you're not sure who your ideal franchise or franchisee is.
Right.
And I've made that mistake a bunch of times. Like I have studs who would be my best friends that I feel like they would kill it. And some of these guys are not performing like I thought they would. And whether it's skill, whether it's will, whether it's belief, whether it's the season of life, those are all things that we're figuring
Yeah.
out. Now it's like, now I have a real clear read. I also made the decision, hey, if you're an early concept, don't make the mistake of believing in everybody who believes in you. Because if you believed in me, like you say, my baby's cute, I love you. Like, I made that mistake a little bit too. And it's really easy to make, even when you have the best of intentions. Like some franchisors will open up a concept and anybody with a check is welcome to the table. But what that creates behind that, you have to manage these people. You're marrying these people for a decade.
Yeah.
And you have to let no one understand how to lead them, how to have tough conversations. It's taken me, I still haven't figured it out, but I'm working a little bit on it every day.
I've heard that from other people. Other franchisors say things like other consultants, they're going to have their point of view, and their point of view is geared a lot of times about based around what makes them the most money. And so you got to take all this advice that you get as a franchisor. I think we have to. Everyone is relying so heavily on the viewpoints, opinions, experiences of others that you also leave yourself susceptible to being persuaded or swayed down the wrong path. And yeah, so it's a challenge. I think a lot of franchisors find it hard to know which way to go. But then again, as entrepreneurs, we're just doing that all the time. Go down that door, open that door. If it's the bad door, shut the door, go back the other way. But
Yeah. No,
it'd
like
be nice if there was like a clear path. And there's just
here's what you think. And here, I can only speak from my experience. That's all I have. But in building a early concept, like you think you know some things and you're willing to test some things. So with your first wave of people, you get into this thing like, hey, let's try this, let's try that. But it only becomes a problem because what people are really looking for when when a sophisticated person wants to buy a franchise, they don't want to make decisions. They want the proven process, right?
right.
And so what I did with early people, hey, let's try this, let's try that. And then when people would come into the system, they'd want to hear everything from me. Then they'd want to go talk to franchisees. And it started to become feeling like the blind leading the blind. Hey, this person is doing something that is like off book, we would call it. And I'm afraid they're going to perpetuate that. So that becomes kind of the core.
Don't talk to that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but then it turns into this. So, like when through this business, I was able to network with established franchisors, and they have a lot of their language is different. They're like, these are our non negotiables, right? They know what works and they hold people accountable. And I think as a leader, I was like tiptoeing on the difference between care and candor. Like I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to be excited. I wanted them to like me, I think too much. And then on the other side of that is if I was to hit them with the candor, it might be a little bit too hard. So as a leader, I had to develop and find a place where establishing standards and holding people to it is the care. And it's like when I let somebody get off track, that's when that's not love. Like here's the other thing. If you're new in franchising and you think that you have a concept and everybody's going to do it and they're going to love you because you showed them something amazing, that's probably not going to be the case. For my franchisees to win the way that I know they have the potential to, I'm going to have to hold them to a standard. But ultimately, I'm going to be the bad guy. But if I'm the bad guy and they're building a legacy for their family, I can sleep at night.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like you're showing them kind of tough love, maybe, but you're ultimately by doing so helping them stay successful, helping them build legacy for their kids and stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, I can think of some people in my system who I love dearly, like brother, that because I love them so much, I didn't hold them to the standard that they needed to be held to be successful. And they weren't as successful as they could be as a
yeah,
result of that. And I thought that was love.
yeah.
I just see it differently today.
Wow. Would you say that there's any like similar scars that you got as a franchisor, unrelated to franchisees, that like the process of starting up, like the getting the FDD, doing the consulting, finding a way to generate leads and business and interest? Any like lessons learned there that you'd want to share with?
For sure. And I think that every time I stub my toe there, it's as a result of that, there was progress. So, like, I think that if I could go back and shake myself 5 years ago, it was like, you need to define and get ahead of everything. Right. So, like when you bring a franchisee in, you need to have a clear path for them because what they're looking for is confidence. And if you're like, hey, here's the next 3 steps, don't worry, that doesn't fly. Because the second that you create friction, lack of trust, lack of painting the vision of where they're going to go, the process, they get nervous and they're stepping out. Like they just signed a 10-year lease, FDD, they have enough to be nervous about, right? So I think that creating complete clarity on the path to say, I faced many challenges, rocky relationships. And the other thing I remember is if I had a problem on step 7, I would focus on step 7 so hard. Right? I didn't have the awareness to say, well, the problem happened in step 2, right? So I really had to adjust my process. Other areas of opportunity for me that I struggled with were communication. So I would share something, say something, and assume it was received the way that I intended. And I was wrong about that. So I had to invest a lot in my ability to communicate, the pace, the frequency, how to move people, because it's a big challenge. I think leadership, accountability, and communication are going to serve you more than anything else.
I'm impressed with your self-reflection because those are things I've always thought you were good at. Not like communication, for example. I'm always like, when you talk, people listen. Like, I remember one time, here's a good story. I walked into your building. We were doing some work on your website at the time, and you were in the middle of a level 10 meeting. You had your whole team there, and you were focused. You were in the zone. And last thing I wanted to do, and then in the moment I walked in, I'm like, oh, I can't interrupt this. So like, I'm just like in the corner, like hoping nobody sees me. And I'm watching it go down. And when you talk, there's 20 people in the room looking at you, listening, and then they talk, and you're like actively listening and and engaging with them. The communication within that team that you had at the time, which was just, your staff in that room, was like obviously so good. It seemed from the
Yeah.
outside so good
Yeah.
and clear.
I mean, I thank you.
Yeah,
But I think that like the level of communication to be successful in business, I'm aiming to be like in the top 1%, right? That would be the goal. Because
yeah,
what I learned is that everything around me that I saw that I was frustrated about were the things that my level of leadership and influence, level of accountability, and level of communication, like it was just too easy for me to say it was their fault. They're not listening, this and that. And I had to go through I did ask myself, well, what is my role in this? And those were the things that helped me get a little bit better at influencing things. And I think if you're an up and coming franchisor or you're top tier, like it never stops. It's like fitness. You got to work on it every single day.
Yeah. And, the thing you said about clarity too, like a lot of the brands that I work with, like I said, are emerging, small. They might have a few open locations. And it's scary for new franchisees to enter that atmosphere when, especially if they're presented with options that include well-established brands in a territory they might be happy with. So it's like, why should they choose your risky, smaller startup other than the financials? I mean, if it might be cheaper, that's like
Right.
one, but hopefully you have something other than you're the cheaper option. So I guess when you were first opening locations and you didn't have 30 yet, which is a huge milestone. And now I'm sure it makes it a lot easier to get the next 30, 40, 100. But when you were first opening locations, how did you get people interested in your model versus maybe a bigger, more established model in fitness, say, that they might be comparing you to?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, and I'm like in the thick of that right now because I know that there's big systems with
Yeah.
limited territory availability, right? And then there's these tiny guys that maybe they're proven, maybe they're not, and then maybe they have a great concept. But what got me to the first level would have kept me small if I didn't switch, and I'll explain. But essentially, everybody who came in the first wave, we'll call it the first dozen or 2 dozen opportunities, they were buying me
Hmm.
100%. Right. So I had cultivated enough relationship with them where they're like saying, okay, I'm going to bet on this dude. And really what I told you, if you bet on me, I'll stop at nothing to prove you right. So they knew I would do the work and I did do the work. But the challenge in that where it brought me is that then I needed to be the person to be communicating. I needed to be the one to handle everything. And I took that on. It's like, I'm the real estate guy, the tech guy, the marketing guy, like all the things. And I thought at the time that's what I needed to do. And that stunted our growth and it stunted people being interested in us. The next phase was build a franchise development team. And that includes field support, opening specialists, finance and compliance, unit operations and training, COO, full stack tech. Like you have to build a squad. And guess what a squad cost? Cash, right? So I had to complete faith build this team. And finding amazing people is also challenging, especially I think that the same things that made me a little weird made it easier for me to find my people, right? So I'm like, hey, if we have a meeting, I'm going to pray. If that's a problem, we could be Facebook friends, and the values and the standards. So when I knew what to look for, the other funny thing I thought is like, hey, I just need a bunch of guys just like me. So I'd go find a couple guys just like me, and that was a problem. So the diversity, the way that my team is and how we think and we need the nurturer, we need the hunter, we need the creative, we need all the people. So my advice is if you're an emerging concept, you want them to be in getting involved with your system because they're confident in your team and they have belief in you, right? Because I think that if early on, like all people, like I had gaps and I had missing systems and I had knowledge gaps. So like I had knowledge gaps in real estate, but my passion would fill those things. And so people would trust me
Yeah.
and I would do everything in my power to retain that equity, but there would be friction points along the way. So then it creates these kind of not rocky relationships, but relationships. And then you put money in the middle of a relationship. It
They're
gets
like, I thought you knew.
yeah, yeah. It's hey, we're a brand new concept, and then 2 months later, we're like, hey, I thought you knew. I was like, hey, I told you we had the thing 75% figured out, and we need amazing people to help you take it the rest of the way. So I think being honest about where you are. I think earlier I could have been as a leader. I've learned that honesty, vulnerability, things like that go so long. So I think that like I wasn't implying I had it all figured out, but when I was struggling personally or professionally or had an obstacle, I probably could have benefited from sharing it with maybe a few more people.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that too in I think a lot of franchisors, a lot of entrepreneurs, leaders in general, have their guard up because they feel like if they show that vulnerability or like they don't know, admit that they don't know something, they look bad. They look like a bad leader. But I think the inverse is true again. It's like if you're willing to admit and be humble and honest, that people believe you more when you actually say you know something and they trust you and come along with you better. Yeah.
Yeah, and they could
But
people
you
are
got to
more.
have some answers for these
Yeah,
franchisees,
no,
though.
yes, of
Yeah.
course. But I think people are more sophisticated now than ever, and they see it and they notice it and they appreciate authenticity and honesty.
Yeah.
And what I found is like when I once believed that if I had a hurdle that I would be judged, what I found now is that if I have the courage to share it, I'm not judged. I'm collaborated with. So that's kind of the cool thing. But I have one thing I want to share.
Yeah.
Early on, so let's talk about store 0 through 12. When I sat with someone, I was thinking of myself, my life. I failed at school, at life, went to prison, failed at marriage, failed as a parent, failed as all these things, right? And I have to sit in front of somebody and convince them that I have something figured out. And those 10,000 things, I didn't want anybody to know about me because I didn't want people to know I didn't have an education, that I didn't come from resources, that I faced trauma as a child. All these are all the secrets, right?
That's
So
interesting, Tim, because you was always so vulnerable when we would chat and
yeah,
honest about those things. But I guess, yeah, when you're interviewing a franchisee, you're like, okay, this is different.
well,
We got
yeah. So
everything figured out. My life's perfect. Don't worry about it. Right.
yeah, I didn't propose it that way, but like I put myself in their shoes and I said, well, what would I have to believe about him? And it's not that I wanted to not disclose. It's just I didn't know how to articulate those things. And why I share that is because today the presentation goes like this: I failed at everything. I went to prison. I failed at marriage. My ex-wife is still here helping, in spite of all my problems. I failed at being a dad. I failed at this. I started this company. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but nobody's more committed to me than me. And there's nothing I won't sacrifice to help you win. So it's so interesting to shift, like everything that I wanted to hide. It's like an Eminem moment. Like all the things I don't want people to know about me, if I just throw my full heart on the table, it's almost always received really well.
Man, that is true. And yeah, those stories make for good speakers, good listen, good conversation. Like,
I don't even
I
have a degree. I don't even have a degree,
yeah.
but I never learned to quit. So that's good, you know.
You don't have a degree, but I remember when we were at the University of Rochester together and you had a bunch of master's students working for you. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Isn't it funny that a prestigious business school will take a guy off the street, and that season of my life gave me so much confidence because, and there was I had a mentor got there. You remember my
yeah, what
Richard
was his name? Yeah, Richard. Yeah.
Couch, yeah, like he was in the first Navy SEAL squad, the whole nine.
Yeah.
To kick my teeth in, and he used to provide me a lot of information too. And I'll be honest with you, like his feedback was amazing. He held me accountable, but his knowledge was like fashion. It was pretty dated. But I learned so much from it. But I was like a sponge. Like I have mentors today. And I try to have people that I mentor. I try to have people that walk right beside me. And I try to mentor others. And I think that though that combination keeps me right where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I feel the same way. And I think if you don't have anybody that you're looking up to, then you're stuck. So, yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
It's so
Just,
funny. It's so funny the kind of people that I used to desire to mentor me. They were like mostly business people. Now it's like just old guys with wisdom. They're walk. They're in like sage years, and like everything. I'm 46 and they're 66, and I'm like worried about this, and they're like laughing at me for worrying about it. And I was like, fair enough.
yeah. Yeah, dude. I remember, I think you helped me partially realize this. You probably remember I lost my dad when I was 19. And I think a lot of my early mentors, I was just looking for a dad. And like, that's a mistake. You end up finding the wrong people or people who, no one's going to fill those shoes. No one's going to do that for you. And so, yeah, now I've learned to, you're looking for something specific, hopefully, when you're out there looking for a mentor, and hopefully it's not a dad.
Yeah, I mean that story. I do remember that.
Yeah.
I also remember he left you a nice hot rod, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm sad to say it was a 50 Mercury and it was a badass car, but it was just too much to keep up. It was falling apart, and I ended up selling it a couple of years ago. I have some regret about it. Maybe one day, what I hope to do is one day build a new one that actually you can drive.
Yeah. That'll be
But
a full circle moment. Well, I want to share this quick.
yeah,
When I was 12 years old, my father went to prison for a decade.
wow,
That same thing got planted in me. It's like, but I say that to say this: at every single point in my life, right on time, a man did step into my life and gave me some guidance. Also, at some point, my father did come home, and it's been a complex relationship, but we've grown closer, much closer over the years, especially after I had children and recognized what
yeah.
it feels like to be a father or to be away from my son. I've experienced that too. So all that was healed for me. And I heard this saying, it says, the older you get, the smarter your father is.
That
And it's like, he's offered me a lot of wise wisdom over the last couple of years.
I've seen you in Facebook photos
Yeah,
connecting with him, and it always looks good. Yeah, you guys look like it's come around a little. That's great.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. Okay, I do have one other question about franchising. That is, do you have any tips or opinions about franchising that you think is counterintuitive, opposite to the advice that you've actually been given or that you hear out there? Something that feels like totally different than what maybe other people talk about doing or doing it a different way.
I have a couple things. Right now, I'm like heavy into going to these conventions where I hear other franchisors speak. And they are speaking to the things that would be sexy, average unit volume,
Yeah.
all the fun stuff. But if I was, it took me a long time to figure out like how to articulate my story and have the confidence to tell the whole thing. I think that for someone new, I would really learn how to find out what drives you, what's passionate about the business, because you might not even know all the levers that make the business successful. It might just be your passion. So you're going to have to look for people that are aligned with that, because you just might not have the SOPs and the supportive systems and the technology and the learning management system and all the things to support that. The other thing that I would be careful of, and this is something that a hard lesson learned, is that a lot of people are going to come to you and say this: is your concept semi-absentee? And the answer is always yes, because there's people looking for that. The caveat to that is that you have to make sure you have the supportive systems in place to educate people enough to be successful. Say a general manager, for instance, right? Where I had the learning gap was two things. The question that they ask comes from a place of, it's a really big question because it's completely contingent on their ability to lead. So if you're a great leader, the path to semi-absentee, if you're amazing at attracting, developing, and holding people accountable,
You could do anything like that. Yeah.
whatever you want, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
If those are things, if those are areas of that are going to be an opportunity for you to learn and be developed, that the path is longer. And if you tell somebody, yes, it is, and the path is longer for them, that's going to be a challenge. The other thing is that if you're going to be in a position like that, a blind spot I had is I didn't have enough in place to teach someone to be a leader worth following, right? So if you want to open a business and you're a franchise partner or you're a franchisor looking for people who want to run something semi-absentee, like you're going to have to find a really influential woman or a stud, because if they want people to follow them and you have a concept that it's important that the people are good, probably every concept, that you need to find people that others are willing to follow.
That's a good point. And I also think you've done something different. I'm sure you have a lot of stories that are like this, but counterintuitive points or tips. But I also feel like you've been building this in a way, like finding your franchisees in a way that's a little non-traditional too. Like maybe not so much, but I feel like there's two games here in franchising. There's the paid media lead gen side of things, and then there's the networking, the conferences, the broker networks, things like that. You've done this more so on that side, correct?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So almost until we had 20 units, that's almost all organic. That doesn't mean it wasn't a lot of work, right? So it was people who were users, people who I had a lot of referral, right? So like I grabbed somebody from a big system, they were excited about the concept, they sent me a ton of referrals of an influential franchisees in a big gym platform. So it's difficult because as a franchisor, your focus should be heavily on the operations and the development of people and your concept. And it's very easy to get attracted to go work on that because you believe growth equals success. And I fell into that trap a little bit. So I ended up putting my focus over there. But what I found is I've tried all the people that get the leads. I've had success with some, not success with others, So I think for me, it was about making sure that you have a system that is predictable, right? And I
Right.
think, and there has to be a little bit of filter there, right? Because you can't jump on the phone with every person who has interest. You have to make sure they meet some minimum criteria. And then it was really important for us to really create what we call a confirmation day. It's a time where we bring people in and vet them because it's a mutual vetting process. And you have to think of it like, hey, we're going to get married for 10 years. We're going to have hard conversations. We have to support, we have to have trust. It's complex. So I think maybe taking your time with that is important. There will come a point when you have enough proof of concept and locations where consultants will take a really good look at what you have to offer. And if you can present in a compelling way and you can cultivate the relationships with the consultants, they will send you leads. And then the only difference is working with consultants is probably going to get you, well, from my experience, I don't want to say a better lead because some of my earliest people that were referrals and my friends were like the most passionate people, right? So passion, some business acumen, maybe $5 in their pocket, but we do work, right? So when the consultant network, they're going to come to you and they have people they're working with vetted candidates that have business experience, resources, management experience. So then it becomes more about, are they going to become passionate about your offering? So I think that like most brands will grow with a combination of the two, but the consultant networks I've had a really great success with. It took me since 2020 to sell enough units to get to about 24, and in the last 90 days we secured about 40 territories.
It's insane.
I entered into that system in January, and there's an onboarding process. So I had to go to some conferences, speak in front of people, and it's been wildly rewarding. And it's also elevated the belief of everybody in my system.
Yeah.
So I suspect that we have some franchise partners that are concerned about growth, but growth creates a greater awareness of the brand. It elevates the value of early legacy franchise partners' opportunity. It brings in fresh oxygen and enthusiasm, and it brings in resources that allow us to level up everything we do.
Yeah. The brand marketing and all that can expand as you do it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm always confused when I hear a franchisee complaining about new territory, unless it's down the street or something
Yeah,
encroaching, obviously.
that's fair.
Yeah.
If you're an up and coming concept, once you have half a dozen stores, there are several services out there that will assess your users and do a white space analysis of the entire United States. The other thing I would do is make sure you have a really solid franchising attorney and that
Oh,
you're
yeah.
following every step when it comes to regulations and where to advertise in states, registration states, non-registration states. I had a couple fumbles in that, cost me some bread.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah. We come across it often. And even just getting your advertising approved and
Mhm.
like New York State's real big on that. Yeah. Tim, I have a lot more, I have a lot more questions, but I fear that we're probably getting to the end of our time. So I'm going to wrap us up here, but thanks, man, for coming on the show. And I super appreciate you and excited to see all your growth. It's been awesome to catch up again.
Yeah, I appreciate you as well. I'm thankful to be here. If you ever need me again, I'd love to. I don't have this thing figured out. There's people 1,000 chapters past me, but I'm happy to share anything I've learned to date. And if anybody's interested in following the journey, they can find me at PLN Tim on Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll do it before and after your first 100. So
Fair
before,
enough.
then after. Yeah. All right, everybody, this is Franchise This, and you can listen to this anywhere where you get podcasts, and we'll be doing another show next week. Thanks again, Tim.
Thank you so much.